everybody. Welcome to the Rural Summit podcast. I am your host, Spencer Allen.
And I'm your host, Michelle Higgs.
And today we have a co-host. And who are you? You're calling in remotely from?
Salem, Indiana. I am Renee Mather.
All right. So before we figure out who Renee is, let's talk about who we are. Who are you, Michelle, and what is the Indiana Rural Summit?
Yes, so I am the founder of the Indiana Rural Summit, which is a coalition of candidates, community leaders, and volunteers committed to giving every rural and small town Hoosier a voice, a choice, and a vote.
All right, and I am here doing the podcast. I don't really have a huge role in the Indiana Rural Summit yet, but we'll see how that works out. I'm just the podcast guy. So, Renee, who are you?
Oh, I am the founder of the Washington County Community Action Coalition, which is a 501c3, and the Indiana Community Action Network, which is a 501c4. Friends with Michelle, out in rural Indiana, doing the things to save my world, because that's how you change the world. So I'm also on the Democratic Committee and the Chief of Staff for the 9th District Democrats.
All right. And I guess before we go any further, sort of something that needs to be explained a little bit is what do we mean by rural? What is rural Indiana?
So rural, there are different variations and definitions for it. In our context, we're using it to describe areas where your central communities of interest, whether they be large employers or universities or city centers, have been, for the most part, removed out of our areas. And so it could mean food deserts, it could mean healthcare deserts, it could mean agricultural centers, but for the most part, it is areas that have lower population, lower investment in infrastructure, and as we are now finding, more and more of an extraction economy. And so when we talk about rural in Indiana, it can mean agricultural, it can mean forests. Largely, though, it means a lot of shuttered small towns.
Would you agree with that, Renee? Do you have anything to add?
Oh, she's right on.
She's right on.
She's right on. Michelle knows her stuff.
All right. And I guess to give a layout of what this podcast is going to be, this is just one episode of hopefully many, and we're going to try to do it weekly. We're going to have me and Michelle as your hosts. We're going to have a co-host each week, and this will either be some sort of a political official or member in rural Indiana, or even a politician or candidate themselves. And we're going to open it up to the rural community to call in and ask us questions on whatever topic we're going over that week. And this week, our topic is gerrymandering. Who wants to start with that?
Well, I will start, because I'm going to correct you on that pronunciation. I learned this weekend that it is pronounced gerrymandering, and nobody really calls it like that, but it is a thing, and that comes because it was originally named after a Massachusetts governor, Elbridge Gerry, and it was a combination of two terms because he had created a district kind of shaped like a salamander. And so they combined Gerry, his last name, with the word salamander, and that's where we ended up with gerrymander. But over time, we've started calling it gerrymander. And I was at an event this past weekend, and there was a professor there who was very much on the thing of, I want everybody to understand that it is pronounced gerrymander. So now, back to what gerrymander means. It largely means diluting the votes of a population into the interest of whatever political party is in power. And so it is very much meant to take away the voices of people in the democratic process. It is done intentionally. The ways that it is done might vary, but largely it is to remove people from the democratic process.
In what way do you think that harms rural areas specifically?
It harms very specifically by separating out people from their representation and gives this illusion that, it is one party that represents, when actually, if you were to talk to a host of people, it is a broad political spectrum that people are on. And whenever you really try to maintain single party control, eventually it is not bringing together the best ideas or allowing for debate and healthy debate to bring forth the best ideas. It ends up basically entrenching structures and power and what we call old boy networks and all of that. So, and we see it. We see it especially in rural areas where the same people might have been in office forever, or nepotism is really big in that. And I think, Renee could probably speak to that a lot more, living in a small town and knowing all the people around that small town.
So, yeah, what are your opinions on that, Renee?
I feel that anytime a hierarchical structure is in place to keep oppression on what is under it, that is a system that needs uprooted. It doesn't promote a way forward. It doesn't help a community or people who are saying, I want to be involved, or even, since we're talking politics, voters who want to feel like their voice or their vote matters, right? When we are oppressing others to create a way forward that is not giving it's not equivocal to their human rights, right? Or our voting rights, or our livelihood. I just want a society where we see each other's humanity as equivocal value. Gerrymandering is a big word that says somebody else in a room who has power, legislative power, whatever, has created a wall that is difficult to work around for the normal person who doesn't know how to work around it, and make something more difficult in the long run because they want what? Power, money, ego, I don't know, whatever it is. And we're just not, can we all just get along?
A way that I always like to think of gerrymandering, I'm probably going to slip and call it gerrymandering forever, but is a way that
you can do it. I believe in you.
Yeah, I'm originally from, and I've spent I've lived in Bloomington for about 4 years now. I moved here in 2020, like the middle of 2021. Before that, I lived for about 15 years in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and I worked there. And it's a pretty rural place. It's like a little more rural than the Bloomington area, but the county was dry and the city was wet, if anybody knows what that means. Which means you can't sell alcohol in the county, but you can sell alcohol in the city. So Warren County surrounding Bowling Green was dry. The city of Bowling Green was wet. So the company I worked for had the gas station I worked at was at the very edge of the city limits. And one issue with that was sometimes if we had like a gas runoff before prepay, or we had to call the police, we had to wait to see which direction he was driving in before we knew if we had to call the county or the city police. Because it was, you leave our parking lot, they're going one way or the other.
Yep.
The company bought a gas station just up the road from mine, which was a little bit into the county. And they wanted to be able to sell liquor there. So I guess they did whatever they had to do to get the city to
annex that?
annex this little bubble up here. And in order to connect it, there's a little tiny strip. The sidewalk is city. So if you're on the sidewalk walking like it's like a quarter mile, on each side of you is the county, but the sidewalk is the city. But you get all the way to this little gas station, and that little gas station is the city, but surrounding it is the county. So they're in a real weird situation. So if a crime happens there, city police have to drive through the county to get to this little bubble. It's like Bowling Green's Hawaii, I guess. But if you look at the Bowling Green map, it's like that everywhere. There's these little weird little strips and bubbles everywhere. And the way I describe gerrymandering to people is like, imagine it's sort of like the wet and dry issue, but it's left and right. So if you're a politician and you're this one party and you're trying to run in this district that probably isn't going to vote for you, but your neighboring district is overwhelmingly, let's just say it's overwhelmingly red. It's an overwhelmingly red district. They can lose 10% of their population and still be a red district. So you make a deal with that politician. He's like, sure, you can annex this little tiny piece and we'll add it to your district so that I'm still in power, and then your district has a 10% higher chance of being red than blue. So it's basically using people for political gain and devaluing the people's actual votes. Is that a good way of putting that?
Yeah, so the two terms that they use are packing and cracking, right? And so, and let's use, for anybody that's in Monroe County is actually a great example of this, because Bloomington is packed. It's like you're allowed to, you're going to be blue. It's a blue dot, right? But on the donut district around that, which is Monroe County and largely rural, that is cracked, and you can see it by it's being represented by 3 House districts. And so Monroe County itself is divided by 4 state representatives and 2 senators, I believe, in how it's divided. And most people, they actually, if you were to ask them, okay, who are your state representatives, and who's your senator, many people just don't know, especially if they're right on that line. Where my house is, my neighbor, one house down, is in a completely different House district. That's how narrow it is. And my House district is only 2 precincts of Monroe, and then the rest is Morgan County and parts of Johnson County. And so it's a very surreal experience when you actually are trying to when they say call your legislator or whatever, and then you realize that your legislator might be majority in a different county, so their interests are that county, especially if they live in that county, right? You don't really get a sense of representation that way. And again, if they make sure that we're going to pack all of the red or the blue in one area to control that, again, it's almost another forced single party. And so I would suggest that in neither case do you get the best representation of the population, because at any one moment a group feels like they never get a say in what is happening to them.
Yeah. Have anything to say about that? I said that like you're going to disagree. Now what,
Who,
Renee?
me? I was actually Congresswoman Erin Houchin, who's the congresswoman for the 9th District, was on the committee for drawing the lines the last time they were drawn, right? Like we just tried to redistrict and the whole thing, right? And there is in the GIS system, Michelle describes this better than I do. Like when she was running, she touched so many different townships and districts where she was located because of what we're talking about, right? And so there is this dog leg in Washington County that was drawn, that Byron Holland, I'm name dropping, pointed out to me, and he was like, did you know that Erin, we're redoing this? And this just happened, and she was on the board the first time to draw these, and there's this really odd line, and it causes confusion for unnecessary confusion. And when you can take people who, I joke sometimes that in Southern Indiana, we get Kentuckiana news. Okay. We have to actively search out Indiana news, state news, right? And there are people I have met in Salem who are like, I'm voting for Andy Bashir. Well, honey, you can't, right? And so if you're even bringing that down to a rural focus, we have people in our county, in our city, who don't realize who they can vote for, what they're voting for, who's in charge of what or why or how, and they're just going along being governed and expected to abide by these different rules or legislations put out, that when you have a dog leg, right? Like maybe my neighbor across the street knows what they're talking about, and they're, oh yeah, I called so and so and got this taken care of, right? If we're talking about rural communities, we talk to our neighbors, and yet you may call that same person that your neighbor did and find out that you're not even in their district or what have you. And so how do you find, it just produces also a lack of knowledge and a lack of being able to find resources. And I think that the confusion and chaos is on purpose.
I think there's something
That
also to be said about if all politics is local. And Spencer, you're talking about Kentucky, and yeah, I imagine this is true for other places where the rules that apply for the city don't apply for the county. And where is that dividing line? And that shifts. And what you end up with is a group of people that live in the rural areas where, because they don't have access to the resources that are for the city, they actually over time develop a thing of, well, the government doesn't work for me. It doesn't, meaning it doesn't help me. And then the further removed they are from their representation, because the representation never comes and talks to them because they don't need to, then that feeds the narrative of, oh, well, then no government actually helps. And that worked really well to radicalize people to be anti-government. And people actually, if you think about it, they're on their devices, they're being advertised to all the time. They have a greater affinity for a brand logo than they do a government entity. And so when that brand logo says, hey, we're going to take over that utility company, or we're going to take over and privatize XYZ, there's this trust that, oh, this company, they're going to treat me well because the company should be good. Company should be altruistic, right? And I've been fascinated with, how did we get to a place where the private corporations are more trusted than the government that should be we the people? And I feel like that's where gerrymandering does it, because gerrymandering separates you from your government by silencing your voice or making it irrelevant. And we see that in play when everybody's like, again, go to the state house, call your legislators, say yes to this or no to that. And time again, it doesn't matter how many hundreds of people show up or make those phone calls, they do whatever they want, simply because by the way that they've drawn the maps, and it works particularly in Indiana because we have straight ticket voting, right? Straight ballot voting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, does Kentucky do that?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
It is Kentucky, Michigan, Oklahoma, Alabama, and South Carolina. There are
Yeah.
6 states.
So there's
Mhm.
and so long as you have that partnered with these kinds of restrictive artificial borders, that they have essentially looked at it mathematically and said this is a 75-25 split. We don't have to campaign. We don't have to actually represent anybody. We just keep doing what we're doing because the math will work for us. And all we have to do is turn out our voters with whatever messaging to just hit that vote single party, vote Republican. And that's what we saw. And I would suggest, too, in 2024, we also experienced through what Elon Musk was doing, there were people showing up at the polls who had never really voted before in their life. And we're not talking young people, we're talking older people. And they had been, basically convinced, I need to go, I'm going to vote this one time. And all they did was they voted for Donald Trump and then they left, or they voted single party and then they left. And not realizing that they have still abdicated any sense of representation because they're a sure bet. It's a sure thing. They're going to go and do that. And so one of the things and the reason why the Rural Summit was created really was to look at these lines and go, wait a second, while they're trying to divide us, we actually can work across these artificially constructed lines, connect with other candidates, other elected officials that align with us, build base across these lines, because the issues don't care about a border, right? So an environmental issue doesn't care. The cuts to education funding don't care. Housing crisis doesn't care. And definitely any kind of health crisis. So all of a sudden, when you start to do that, you realize more regional issues that people are aligned with. And one of the biggest things right now is like data centers. People are very, very upset about data centers. And so I'll be honest, I start to look at where the watersheds are and starting to connect what communities are attached to this particular watershed and why does that matter. So, yeah.
What does watershed mean when you say
Watershed,
that?
in the way I use it, is essentially you've got your aquifers and the way your rivers are, and it's like water from one particular aquifer or watershed stays kind of contained within that, and then you might have another watershed completely different. I've learned from a couple of people who deal with this, like I wasn't even aware, like if you take water from one watershed and then you move it, i.e. the LEAP project that they're talking about, and you move it and you say, oh, we're going to do wastewater treatment and it'll go back into a river or whatever. If that creek bed is not attached to the same watershed as the other, where you took the water out of, then downriver of the original watershed, they will have less water. Because the idea is if you take water out of a river, use it, return it through a treatment so that it's drinkable or whatever, and then you put it back into the same river, downriver, then you should be able to, it shouldn't impact people. But if you remove it and then dump it someplace else, now you have less water. And this was one of the things that a lot of people, when they're making plans to move water here, there, and everywhere and use it for this project, if we have those things and people aren't talking, if they're not aware, and again, I go back to, well, that's in a different district. That's a different county. That's a different whatever arbitrary line. I mean, Ohio's now like lowering their environmental standards for data center wastewater treatment so they can dump it into the Ohio River because it's better for, their economic development, right? It's cheaper. I think Indiana would have a thing to say about that, right? We share that water. So it'll be interesting, like all these man-made lines, we in our minds, we go, oh, well, that's a completely different world, a completely different thing. But, you grew up in Kentucky and that's a very, that bridge to Indiana, People make that commute all the time. People live in one state, work in the other state. They don't even think about it.
What kind of wastewater would a data center have? Like, how would that be toxic?
I am nowhere near qualified to even talk about all of that. But from what I understand, you're still dealing with when it has to cool, there's chemicals and stuff, right? And part of the challenge is that water will evaporate, and it's those chemicals that get left and build up. If you're doing, and that's like in a closed loop system, in something where you're constantly bringing in water and then discharging water, it's even more so. But my understanding when it comes to the water issue is very, very much all of the different chemicals or
so coolant chemicals, basically.
That, yeah, and even just from what I understand too, even just going through the metals and stuff, like you're going to have trace metals and things that are not good for us in concentration. So when they pass legislation to remove you can't have parts per million or whatever, we can lower those standards. The more you lower those standards, then you can come back and say, oh yeah, we're within regulations. But the regulations keep moving and becoming more dangerous, and I think that's the biggest concern.
Okay, so not to get too off topic for this one, but something I wanted to ask was, how would you recommend like congressional, either federal or state level districts be drawn? Like, what is a fair, non-gerrymandered way of making these districts?
Usually it's around communities of interest. I would say keep your counties whole. You don't want to divide that. I will say, again, our congressional districts, they were drawn specifically to prop up and make secure a Republican stronghold. However, I will also say that they did try to keep most of the counties intact. When they were proposing the redraw, the redistricting, the thing that was most unusual in that is they were actually proposing to connect they were dividing Marion County into, I want to say 4 congressional districts, maybe 5, and then connecting that through Marion to Morgan to Brown County. It was a weird way of doing it.
Just to add enough rural vote in there to hopefully lower the Democratic threshold, maybe?
Oh, yeah. No, that's exactly what it is. That was a classic case of they're going to crack Marion County and dilute all of that. And by putting one element, 1/4 with Morgan County on down to, like, that was strategic. We're going to dilute it with rural. And as a matter of fact, when I first looked at that, the thing that frustrated me the most with that proposal was an intentional, we're going to dilute urban voices and put them with rural voices as though we are going to not have shared issues. Because you'll hear this a lot. It's like, oh, rural and urban, they're at odds. And where you see that the most play out is, let's say, around education. The idea with vouchers, when school vouchers first came, was, oh, our urban schools need vouchers. The public school system is not doing so well. We need to support vouchers for these urban schools. And so many people were like, okay, that's fine. Let's do it. It doesn't impact me. But what we've learned is that these vouchers come off the top. So our rural schools are losing funding to go to school vouchers that largely don't have any schools in their area. One county in particular is Brown County. They don't have any vouchered schools there. And the other year they lost about $600,000. So when they try to pit urban against rural, that's where I get really annoyed, because the truth of the matter is that our issues are the same. We still have housing issues. We still have environmental issues. We still have education issues. We want the same things for our families. And it's a justice issue. It's an equity issue. It's a dignity issue. Like, they're across the board. And again, I go back to this is why the data center fight is so very interesting, because there's a data center being proposed in Marion County, and there's data centers being proposed in Morgan, and all the way around multiple counties, rural and urban. And so anytime you have an issue that brings people to the table where they're talking about it from their lens, from their experience, and their world is different. They come from a small town or rural or urban or suburban. It's like the more people come to those tables and go, hey, I have this issue too, the stronger the people become. And I just feel like the more that they try to put these lines, these artificial lines in, it just divides us.
So where should the lines be? Like,
If we have to have lines, I think, again, I would look at watersheds myself, watersheds and school districts. What are the things that actually draw people together? Where do people naturally need to have a say on something? So if you have a school district, well, where does that school district impact people? People are going to be aware of everything around that school district. Again, back to the watersheds. If you're going to have an environmental issue, it's going to impact a watershed. So what are the communities that are impacted by decisions that affect that? To me, that's a more natural way of doing it. But again, it doesn't protect a partisan vote. It protects people. And so I feel like, again, it's about power, and it's about trying to control people. And so I don't know that they're ever going to follow my idea on that. But if you are taking and putting 2 precincts of a county into one congressional district, and only 2 precincts of that county, it feels like you're intentionally dividing a group of people. You're isolating them out so they don't have a say in something. And so I don't know. I feel like we need to be looking at keeping counties whole. Like, if your local government, if all politics is local and you want to have a say in your local government, and that's where your focus is, then the more that you stay contained within that county and have your representation in that county or higher up, I just feel like that would be better.
all right, you got anything to say about that, Renee, before we go into our callers?
I do. There was a documentary I watched several years back with my husband about redlining. Do we know redlining?
Oh, yeah.
When I hear gerrymandering, I feel like it is the the current version of the same mess.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, Matt Pierce has been on this rules committee before. Is it rules committee? The whenever the conversation comes up for drawing lines, it just, as human beings, there's a way to, we have ways and methods of doing things, and gerrymandering is not about making the most sense and doing the right thing. It would make the most sense to draw lines according to county lines, right? And then putting in, so there are some states, California, Arizona, and Michigan have independent redistricting commissions, right? I think that's wonderful. And then you could throw in some math, pull the data. Like, if the ninth district, for example, which is what we're in, has, and these are arbitrary numbers because I am not pulling actual data, okay? But say we have 10,000 people in the ninth district, which is, again, just roll with me. And we have 20,000 people in District 1, the first, right? How do we make those fair? Or if we have, it just doing it in a way that is fair and balanced. But honestly, fair and balanced, like, why is that even something to laugh at? It's like, there's, that's a lot to unpack. I mean, here's the thing. Here's the thing. If we were able to rebuild the infrastructure of democracy, the women would have it solved rather quickly if they would listen to us. No offense to Spencer here, but like there are ways that there's just a way to do this where it makes more sense and is fair and balanced. Why do they even get that term? That's not fair or balanced.
It's newspeak.
The news. Yeah.
Isn't that what it's called? Newspeak from 1984.
Mm-hmm.
You say the opposite of what you mean.
Yep.
So, like, one last point there. I ran for city council in 2023. And in rural America, rural Indiana, I wish you did not have to put an R or a D beside your name if you lived in a certain population level, right? Because the state of Indiana has straight party ticket voting, which is completely ridiculous. And because of that, some people say, oh, yeah, but you know so and so, so I'm going to go ahead and select my straight party like I always do, but I'm going to go ahead over here and vote for this person because I know them. Some people say that, but not everybody does that. And there are people in our rural communities who have the best intentions and forward hope for the community. And then there are people who don't. And the people who do should have an equal opportunity to be voted in to do the right thing for their neighbors and not have to worry about working twice as hard to get people to vote for them because they have a D instead of an R or vice versa.
Oh, she's here. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Are we ready for our first guest?
Psyched.
Hello?
Hello?
LaRue.
Spencer?
Yes. So we spoke earlier, and you said you were interested in being a guest on our episode on gerrymandering. Is that true?
Right, we did discuss gerrymandering. I do wonder a few things about him and the concept.
Okay, first of all, do you prefer gerrymandering or gerrymandering?
Larrymandering, Terrymandering, it's fine.
All right. So I'm going to have the two other people here introduce themselves to you, and you can ask them some things. So,
Yeah. So, hi. I am Michelle Higgs, and I'm with the Indiana Rural Summit. Oh, hey.
Hello.
And I am Renee Mather. I am also with the Indiana Rural Summit, but I live in Salem, Indiana, and started a 501c3 and a 501c4. So, and have an office.
I like your office.
And a bunch of kids. I have 5 kids.
Do you gerrymander the kids?
I've tried.
Love it.
They like to cross boundary lines and make demands. I mean,
all right. So, what
should we explain the Gary thing?
Yeah,
Good.
I mean, I guess I kind of know that it's when they split up, stuff and things to manipulate votes, the parties and whatnot.
So, LaRue, as you are just the poster child of just a typical rural Indiana person, What would it take to get you pissed off enough about gerrymandering to actually go out and vote about it?
Well, I mean, will you tell me how bad gerrymandering can get? What's gonna piss me off so much?
Y'all want to explain? Why you should probably already be
Michelle's
pissed
got
off?
this.
Tag.
Tag. Michelle, you're in.
Yeah.
Michelle.
Well, no, I think, for example, data centers or utility companies, actually, maybe utilities is a better one. We have legislators at the State House who, because they can guarantee that they're not going to really have any opposition, that they probably won't lose their seat or even have anybody run against them, that they will propose bills that remove any opposition, any complaints. We could go up there and say, hey, we want our rates not to be so high. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, we feel for you. And then they'll still vote to say that the utility companies can raise your rates. And so I think that's probably one of those things where it doesn't matter how much you might be upset about something. If they can rig the election so that, and by rig I mean like control legally through how they put the districts together, so that they maintain their power at all times. That's one of those things that we're talking about, is how do we, especially in rural areas where they feel like your vote is guaranteed because it's always been, a red district or a blue district or whatever. So because of that, they actually don't have to go to a town hall. They don't actually have to answer you, the voter. And I think that, at least Spencer, I think that's kind of what you're talking about, is like what's going to get you angry enough as a voter to go, wait a second, you're not representing me enough.
Yeah, like think of gerrymandering, LaRue, kind of like, imagine that you and everyone in your neighborhood are all super in favor of just full-out marijuana recreational legalization.
Which is true.
Yes, which
Yep.
I know. So, imagine that your entire everyone around you is just super in support of that, and you want to legalize it in your neighborhood, but then you realize that the way the state has gerrymandered your entire county, every one of your houses on this neighborhood is in a different, like your house belongs to this neighborhood over here, your neighbor's house belongs to this neighborhood over here. So even though your neighborhood majority 100% wants to do something, you're divided up into all these other ones so that your voice is watered down by all of these
Right.
anti-weed people. So this gerrymandered, the way that's been gerrymandered is it's completely watered down your voice so that you're now voiceless.
Right. I mean, I think that in itself pisses me off.
Yeah.
I mean, I know someone in Cloverdale, Indiana, that's actually having something that sounds similar with the solar farms. There's a huge solar farm company that's trying to take a ton of farmland there, and we all know the kind of consequences of the solar and data farms with just overall destruction of quality of life for local rural folks. And they are actually able to have town hall meetings and have delayed and are talking with officials about it, but
Yeah,
I'm sure that's
kind of
part
what
of it.
that's kind of what we're hoping to do with this podcast, is to make way more people aware of what's going on, so more people realize that while they still can, they still have a voice about something like this. And we're trying to find people who maybe don't know much about it. A lot of the people that I've been trying to ask today about, like, do you want to be on this podcast? They're like, oh, well, I don't know anything about gerrymandering. I don't know anything about politics. And I'm just like, that's the point. Like, we want more people to like, we're not trying to tell you to vote one way or the other. We're just trying to tell you that you have a voice.
Yeah.
You think
And that you're always being manipulated as a voter, frankly.
especially if you're rural, because it's easier to lump you into other things. Like, rural people are very taken advantage of in this kind of situation.
Oh, for sure. Especially, obviously, as we know, like just a lack of care
Mhm.
because of past being burned by gerrymander and his devious ways. But yeah, I mean,
like
it's
you were saying
also
earlier.
yeah, like, and it's been happening for like an eternity and a half. So everyone's kind of by default feeling a little defeated, like, oh well, I'm gonna vote, but it's not even really gonna matter. So it's a cycle.
Yeah. So
What do you think would help change that statement? Because I've heard it said, I've said it. Um, when I've run as a candidate, I've had people say, well, maybe I'll go in and go ahead and vote for you. And then if they find out that they can't, like we're talking about rural people, and maybe they're not in my district or township or whatever, and they can't vote for me, and then they're like, well, my vote's not going to matter anyway. So
Might as
what
well
would
not vote.
yeah, but what would change that? What makes you feel like your vote matters?
I think for like me and other rural people, it would be seeing change on a smaller level that could come from even your vote not, you know, winning.
Mhm.
Something like you're kind of fueled in a way by what you voted for, even if they didn't win. I guess if that makes sense.
Yeah,
It's more like it all just comes down to community and individuals. Like we were saying, you're like, my
it
vote doesn't matter.
does.
And then that's just how it happens.
It does. I listened to Kamala speak in Indy last week, and one of the things that they asked her, because it was her book tour, and we all know what happened at the end of her 107
Oh,
days. And the question was, the thing she brought up that she struggled the most with her tagline, which was at the end of every rally, at the end of everything, she would say, when we fight, and then the crowd would respond, we win. And she said one of the hardest things for her on November 6th of 2024 was that specific thing, feeling like she let a bunch of people down. And then the point, though, is it doesn't mean we always win immediately, right? There's other ways to look at the win. And so if we're speaking about your vote mattering or not mattering, um, getting up and doing it simply because you can is a win. And whenever we end up looking at the data or whatever that comes out afterwards, moving points, bringing what constitutes a win, right? Drawing attention to the need, um, changing the numbers in any direction. Um, like you said, community. When I ran, I drew attention to a water situation that we have locally. I didn't win, but more people knew about the water situation, and there was a water task force that was done and that type of thing
right.
where
You get more sway every time, more
Mhm,
followers and more backing.
mhm. If we don't have the conversations and we don't try to get into the rooms where the decisions are being made, if we don't even try, then we're losing.
I think that
Yeah, exactly.
that's a little bit about when so LaRue, I ran for State House in 2024, and I'd come from community organizing. That was my background. So my intent in running really was to use that as a way of organizing. And from that is what emerged with the Indiana Rural Summit. So we organize candidates, community leaders, volunteers specifically to give rural and small town Hoosiers a voice, right? And in 2024, we organized 12 House candidates across southern Indiana, mostly because so many of these incumbents had never, they hadn't been opposed. Or very rarely. And it's hard to have people run for office if they don't feel like they've got even a chance, right? The numbers aren't there. And yet, if there's not another voice, another person to vote for, then why do we bother even showing up? That was kind of the supposition. The exciting thing is, even though I didn't win my race, we were successful in starting to build a groundswell around we need people to run in rural. We need those people to amplify the issues that are happening, kind of boots on the ground. And so this year, we actually have now, out of 100 House races, 91 races are contested. And all 25 Senate races are contested. We haven't had that since 1974. So to me, I'm excited because what it's doing is, even after coming out of the legislative session that we've had, where, again, they were able to pretty much do whatever they wanted. And again, going back to the data center, we had 7 bills, I believe, that were very people-focused, wanting to protect water and environment and all that. And none of those got through. And so that was very frustrating. However, for the first time, we actually had people able to amplify the stories that were happening in those districts. And as a matter of fact, you mentioned Cloverdale. The person who is running in my district for 2026, her campaign manager was very involved in that fight around the solar fields. So to me, that's a huge win, that we're bringing in more people that did not feel like they could participate in the political public arena, and we just need more.
Yeah, I know when I was applying to run for delegate, some people made the comments that there's like in past years, like when you're voting for delegate, it's like choose 5 and there's only 2 names there. This year, there's like 15 people, and they're like overloaded everywhere. And I'm like, that's a good thing, right? I mean, it just says like, look at this huge wave of people that are wanting to be involved in this. Like, I don't think people realize just how bad for the party in power that these midterms are going to be. Like it could be.
I actually had a legislator, I won't name names, but I had a legislator say, hold me accountable, and if you don't like what I'm doing, vote me out. Now, he's not running for re-election this year, so that was a safe bet. But the other part is he ran unopposed before, and he's one of those, like, such a safe seat right now that to say, well, if you don't like what I'm doing, vote me out is... I don't know if you remember, there's been cartoons of Charlie Brown and Lucy holding the football and then pulling the football away. That's how it feels. And there's a part of me that gets really angry. It's like, you're saying that because you know that there's no way right now that's going to be held true. We can't hold you accountable. And my hope is that every single person that is getting engaged now, more people are going to go out and vote. They're not going to that we will have had critical mass. At the water parks when they have the buckets and you see like the buckets just the drip of water, right? And you sit there and you're like, somebody's going to get that bucket on their head, my hope is that this is the year where the drips and drips, the masses of us will have hit critical mass, because I personally, I don't think it's a right or left issue. I mean, it is an issue of the top and bottom. We've got an Epstein class, billionaire class that has basically bought our politicians, and if we cannot mobilize, they get everything that they ask for.
Like, the right is just as pissed as the left is. Like, I don't know if any of you, I think I texted you all about it, but yesterday it came out that Alex Jones and Nick Fuentes are both voting like Democrat in the midterms because they are that fed up. Well, I know Nick Fuentes says he is. I don't know if Alex Jones.
I'd like to see some proof, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I mean, for them to even say that.
It's
That
true
says a lot.
because then the few people that watch that are like, "Yo, wait, Nick Fuentes is gonna vote Dem."
Did
Alright.
any of you see the Infowars yesterday, or that clip? Like, Alex Jones is crying. He's coming to the realization that he's like was I scammed the whole time, and he's like crying on set.
Oh, he don't care.
He's all about the ratings. I swear to God.
He's an actor.
Yeah,
Yep.
but I don't know about Nick Fuentes though. Like,
He probably just needs to reel in some more women, and he ran out of them.
he really.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right, well, it's been great chatting with you guys.
Yeah, thanks for
Yeah,
being
I
our
hope-
first guest, LaRue.
I hope I could provide some backboard to bounce off of.
Yep.
All right, well,
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
but anyway, thank you everyone for listening to this episode of the Rural Summit podcast. Do we have any closing words before we head out?
Thank you. It was great talking about gerrymandering, all the different things, and
Possum opossum.
possum. Yep. No. Stay informed. Stay empowered.
Thank you for having me. Live long and prosper.